Hi, this is Mahavan Das. Welcome to Simple Gita, Chapter 10. This chapter is entitled The Opulence of the Absolute. Let's take a look at the connection between it and the previous chapter. At the end of Chapter 9, Krishna explained the glories of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service. To generate more devotion in his devotee, he explains his opulences in Chapter 10. And a short preview of this chapter. At the end of the last chapter, Krishna described pure devotional service and how he reciprocates with his devotees. And he concluded with his most confidential instruction, always think of me, become my devotee. In this chapter, Krishna will describe those opulences upon which a devotee can fix his mind and thus remember him whenever he sees anything opulent, powerful, and beautiful in the world. Knowing these opulences to be Krishna's, one can understand that Krishna is worthy of one's devotion. Let's check out the first verse and purport for this chapter from Bhagavad-Gita as it is. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna. Because you are my dear friend, for your benefit I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained." Srila Prabhupada's purport. The word Bhagavan is explained thus by Parashara Muni, one who is full in 6 opulences, who has full strength, full fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation, is Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. While Krishna was present on this earth, he displayed all 6 opulences. Therefore, great sages like Parashara Muni have all accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now Krishna is instructing Arjuna in more confidential knowledge of his opulences and his work. Previously, beginning with the 7th chapter, the Lord has already explained his different energies and how they are acting. Now, in this chapter, he explains his specific opulences to Arjuna. In the previous chapter, he has clearly explained his different energies to establish devotion and firm conviction. Again, in this chapter, he tells Arjuna about his manifestations and various opulences. The more one hears about the Supreme God, the more one becomes fixed in devotional service. One should always hear about the Lord in the association of devotees. That will enhance one's devotional service. Discourses in the society of devotees can take place only among those who are really anxious to be in Krishna consciousness. Others cannot take part in such discourses. The Lord clearly tells Arjuna that because Arjuna is very dear to him, for his benefit such discourses are taking place. Let's go over the key points here in chapter 10. The first key point we get is that Krishna, as the source of all, is unknowable by any conditioned soul. Krishna describes here at the beginning of the chapter that his origin is impossible for any conditioned soul to understand because he is the source of everything. He is the source of everyone. The principle in operation here is that which has been created can't independently understand its own source. If we just think about our own situation here, we cannot understand independently who our own parents are because our conception took place before we were conscious. So similarly, Krishna explains in this chapter, neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages. So even great higher beings can't actually understand who Krishna is. What to speak of ordinary human beings? But one who understands from Krishna himself that he is the origin of everyone and everything serves him with devotion. Srila Prabhupada explains here, unless one is firmly convinced of the different opulences of the Supreme Lord, he cannot engage in devotional service. Generally, people know that God is great, but they do not know in detail how God is great. Here are the details. If one knows factually how God is great, then naturally he becomes a surrendered soul and engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord. When one factually knows the opulences of the Supreme, there is no alternative but to surrender to him. This factual knowledge can be known from the descriptions in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-Gita and similar literatures. In the administration of this universe, there are many demigods distributed throughout the planetary system, and the chief of them are Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the four great Kumaras, and the other patriarchs. There are many forefathers of the population of the universe, and all of them are born of the Supreme Lord Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original forefather of all forefathers. These are some of the opulences of the Supreme Lord. All this particular knowledge is required in order to increase one's interest in the loving devotional service of the Lord. One should not neglect to understand fully how great Krishna is, for by knowing the greatness of Krishna, one will be able to be fixed in sincere devotional service. So this is why Krishna is explaining his opulences to Arjuna in this chapter. Specific knowledge of the Supreme is essential for a deep relationship to be established and to flourish. Simply having some vague idea that there is some kind of Supreme, some kind of God, is better than nothing, but it's not enough information for a deep relationship to develop. Deep relationships are about love, and there can't actually be any love without attraction. And attraction is based on specific information of what makes the beloved, the person that you're trying to love, attractive. In other words, specific information of their opulences. As we heard Srila Prabhupada explain in today's purport to the first verse, that Krishna is known as Bhagavan, or one who is full in 6 opulences. So this is the actual definition of the Supreme in yoga wisdom. The term is Bhagavan, which means one who is full in all opulences, specifically 6: strength, fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation. So these specific manifestations of opulence make someone attractive. And if you can find that person who has all 6 of them in full, unlimitedly, then you've found the most attractive person. The person who has the potency to attract everyone and everything. That person is known as Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So as Srila Prabhupada explained, great sages who understand this qualification of the Supreme have all accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead because while Krishna was present on this earth, he displayed all 6 opulences. So this information is essential for us if we actually want a genuine, deep, loving relationship with the Supreme. We need specific information of how the Supreme is all attractive, which means we need information of his various opulences. So Krishna in this chapter is giving us the opportunity to understand those opulences of his, at least to some degree, because as we will hear at the end of the chapter, actually Krishna's opulences are unlimited. Now when we use the term opulences, we're referring to specific manifestations of energy. In the next section of the chapter, the key point is pure bhakti yoga is the essence of the Bhagavad-Gita, and that is explained in 4 verses. These are texts 8 to 11, which are often called the 4 seed verses of the Bhagavad-Gita. So the whole essential philosophy of the Bhagavad-Gita, which is pure bhakti yoga, can be summarized with these 4 seed verses. In this section, Krishna describes the opulence of his position as the source of all energies, material and spiritual, and the eagerness of his devotees to love and serve him, and his reciprocation with them. In this way, the essence of the Gita is summarized in these 4 seed verses, texts 8 to 11. So I will read those verses. The first verse, text 8, Krishna says, "I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts." All of Krishna's opulences, therefore, are summarized in this text 8. He's the source of everything, material and spiritual, and those who actually understand that fully give their hearts to Krishna. The next text, text number 9, he says, "The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me." So, knowing Krishna as the source of all, his pure devotees live only for his pleasure. They're always thinking about him, they're always discussing his philosophy, his pastimes, and they're always rendering practical service to him. And in this way, they enjoy great satisfaction and bliss. Krishna goes on in text number 10, "To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me." So Krishna reciprocates with these pure devotees by destroying their ignorance that is accumulated from countless births in this material world, by personally giving them the intelligence how they can perfect their loving relationship with him. And the final of the 4 seed verses, Krishna continues. He says, "To show them, the pure devotees, special mercy, I, dwelling within their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance." So he does this as the supersoul in his expansion, as the supersoul in the heart of every living entity. And this is his special mercy, which he reserves for his pure devotees. So these are the 4 seed verses of the Bhagavad-Gita. The essence of the whole Gita is summarized here in these 4 verses. The next section of the chapter, the key point we get is Arjuna accepting Krishna's position and asking to hear more details of his specific opulences. Arjuna refers to previous authorities to confirm what he has heard from Krishna, that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth. He also confirms that no one fully knows Krishna except Krishna himself. Then Arjuna asks Krishna to describe his opulences in more detail, so that when he's experiencing the material world, he knows how to remember Krishna. He also wants to hear more about Krishna because that's the pleasure of a pure devotee. Just as we, in the ordinary sense, we like to hear the glories of those that we love, those that are near and dear to us. So similarly, the pure devotees who live only for Krishna's pleasure always want to hear about their constant object of affection. And the final section of the chapter, which is a long section where Krishna describes his opulences, he describes only his most prominent opulences because his opulences are unlimited. So I'll just summarize some of the opulences Krishna explains in this section. Krishna explains that he's the all-pervading supersoul. He's the beginning, middle, and end of all beings. He says he's the light of the radiant sun, of the stars and the moon. He says of senses, he is the mind. In living beings, he is consciousness. Of bodies of water, he is the ocean. Of vibrations, he's the transcendental Om. Of sacrifices, he is the chanting of the divine names of the Supreme. Of immovable things, he is the Himalayas. Of men, he is the monarch. Of subduers, he is time. Of beasts, the lion. Of fishes, the shark. Of purifiers, the wind. Of flowing rivers, he is the Ganges. He says, I am all-devouring death. He says of seasons, I am flower-bearing spring. He says, I am the gambling of cheats. I am victory. I am adventure. I am the strength of the strong. And of the wise, I am the wisdom. He says, I am the generating seed of all existences. There is no being, moving or non-moving, that can exist without me. And Krishna ends this description of some of his unlimited opulences in this world by explaining that there is practically no end to his opulences, and actually whatever we see in this world that is opulent, beautiful, or glorious is actually just a spark of his splendor. He concludes the chapter by saying, but what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. Srila Prabhupada gives a nice conclusion here to the chapter in his purport. He says, the Supreme Lord is represented throughout the entire material universes by his entering into all things as the Supersoul. The Lord here tells Arjuna that there is no point in understanding how things exist in their separate opulence and grandeur. He should know that all things are existing due to Krishna's entering them as Supersoul. From Brahma, the most gigantic entity, on down to the smallest ant, all are existing because the Lord has entered each and all and is sustaining them. If, however, one thoroughly studies the different descriptions of the opulences and expansions of Krishna's energy, then one can understand without any doubt the position of Lord Sri Krishna and can fix his mind in the worship of Krishna without deviation. The Lord is all-pervading by the expansion of his partial representation, the Supersoul, who enters into everything that is. Pure devotees therefore concentrate their minds in Krishna consciousness in full devotional service. Therefore, they are always situated in the transcendental position. Devotional service and worship of Krishna are very clearly indicated in this chapter in verses 8 through 11. So those are the 4 seed verses that we covered. That is the way of pure devotional service. How one can attain the highest devotional perfection of association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead has been thoroughly explained in this chapter. Let's summarize the chapter. We've heard that because Krishna is the origin of everything created, no created being can know him independently, and that one who understands his position as the source of all becomes fixed in Bhakti Yoga. We've heard the 4 seed verses of the Bhagavad-Gita, where Krishna explains that he is the source of everything, material and spiritual, and that those who know this give their minds, bodies, and words to him in pure love, and enjoy great satisfaction and bliss by discussing and hearing about him. Then he explained how he reciprocates with such devotees by personally giving them the intelligence to perfect their spiritual endeavors. We then heard Arjuna accept Krishna's position as the Supreme Personality, which is also verified by great authorities, and asked to hear more about his opulences manifested in the material world. Krishna did this in brief, concluding by saying that there is practically no end to his opulence, that all opulent, beautiful, and glorious creations are only a spark of his splendor, and that with a single fragment of himself he pervades and supports this entire universe. Let's preview chapter 11. Chapter 11 is entitled The Universal Form. In chapter 10, Krishna said he pervades and supports the entire universe with a single fragment of his power. So in chapter 11, Arjuna asks him to show that all-pervasive universal form, and Krishna does so. Thank you so much for joining me today in this class on chapter 10, The Opulence of the Absolute. And I look forward to seeing you in the next class on chapter 11, The Universal Form.